Today I will explain the mysterious series from, focusing on Season 3, Episode 1. Season 3 picks up where Season 2 left off. 3 days later, Tabitha wakes up in a hospital, injured. A doctor named Brody tells her that some hikers found her hurt in the nearby forest and brought her to the hospital. Dr. Brody asks about her identity and where she's from, but Tabitha avoids answering and claims she can't remember anything at the moment. She learns from the doctor that she is in Camden, New Jersey. Then, a nurse informs the doctor that the police have arrived to investigate Tabitha's case. Brody tells her to rest and leaves. Realizing the police might arrest her, Tabitha quickly grabs her clothes and a box Victor gave her and sneaks out of the room. While walking down the street, she spots the boy in white clothing, who gestures for her to follow him. She trails him into a shop. Once inside, she asks the boy if this is the only way out. When the boy turns around, she realizes it's someone else, and everyone around thinks she's crazy. She quickly leaves. The scene shifts to Boyd, who is cleaning his wound. He starts imagining Father Catry again. Even though the father has passed away, Father tells him that Christy could have handled this task, but Boyd explains that Christy is busy with something else. Father warns that winter will worsen soon, and they don't have enough food, causing the town to be in fear. Father then asks what Boyd plans to do. Boyd assures him that they have enough blankets and that he doesn't want anyone to live in fear. He also plans to find more food. As they talk, Boyd hears Ethan's voice outside. He goes out to see Mrs. Chan, Kenny's mother, stopping Ethan from heading toward the forest. As he was planning to search for his mother, Jim arrives and tries to reassure Ethan, promising to bring his mother back. At that moment, Jim's daughter, Julie, shows up and says, "Mom is missing, but it's not your fault." Before storming off in frustration, unable to handle the situation, Jim quickly packs his bag to go find his wife. Boyd warns him that what he's doing is dangerous, because when Boyd went into the forest with Sarah, they faced many dangers, and the talisman stones didn't work properly. Jim replies, "But you came back." They start arguing, and just then, Kenny arrives and asks, "What's going on here?" Jim says, "I'm going to find my wife." Boyd, understanding the situation, tells Jim that before heading out, there are some things he needs to know and consider before making his move. Meanwhile, Fatima, struggling with severe nausea due to her pregnancy, has been in the bathroom for nearly 15 minutes. A woman from Colony House keeps knocking repeatedly to use the bathroom, forcing Fatima to come out. The woman behaves rudely toward her, but Ellis arrives and carefully helps Fatima back to her room. An older woman named Telly, noticing Ellis's concern, reassures him, saying, "The first few months are tough for everyone, but things will get better with time." Boyd then takes Jim inside and begins to explain. "When Sarah and I were in the forest, we saw small houses. We even set up a tent near a large tree. If you follow the right path, you'll find our tent, and you can spend the night there. That way, you won't be in too much danger." Just then, Kenny offers to go with Jim, but Boyd pulls Kenny aside and says, "No, it's too dangerous. You shouldn't go with him." Kenny responds, "I have to help him. He has a small family, and he needs our support." Suddenly, they hear the sound of glass breaking from a nearby house, so Boyd and Kenny rush over. Inside, they find a man named Jade lying on the floor, behaving erratically. Boyd asks, "What's wrong with you?" But Jade doesn't respond. Boyd and Kenny lift him up and start taking him to the police station. The scene shifts to Tabitha, who is walking aimlessly, unsure of what to do. She spots two girls and notices they have a phone. Desperate, she asks if she can borrow the phone to make a call. Seeing her state, they hand her the phone, and Tabitha calls her mother. Her mother, alarmed by the call, urges Tabitha to quickly share her location and asks her to go to the police. But Tabitha reassures her mother that she's fine and will return soon with her family. She tells her not to worry, then ends the call. Afterward, Tabitha sees a church and enters, seeking some peace. She approaches the priest and expresses a desire to confess her sins. She says, "I don't know how I got here, or how I'll get back, but I needed to talk to someone." Tabitha opens up to the priest, explaining how she ended up in Camden. She tells him about the town, where monsters come out at night, and admits To be honest, I've lost my faith in God. Because he didn't help me. I lost my young son, Thomas, and now my family is waiting for me. I don't believe in God anymore." Though the priest doesn't fully believe her story, he doesn't show it and listens empathetically. At one point, Tabitha leaves. But the priest stops her and asks about the sketchbox she was carrying. Tabitha explains that, when she was in that town, a man named Victor gave her the box and told her there was food inside. The priest asks her to open it. When she does, along with food, she finds some lines written inside the box by Victor. In those lines, Victor had written that if she ever gets lost in this city, she should go to a particular address. At that moment, she realizes where she actually needs to go. She leaves the church. The scene shifts to Kenny. We see Kenny arriving with Christy to meet his mom, Mrs. Chan. His mother gives him some food and tells him to come back as soon as possible. She says, "I have no one but you." Kenny reassures her that nothing will happen to him and that he'll return soon. Meanwhile, Jim visits his kids, telling them he'll bring their mother back soon. After meeting his children, Jim sets out. Boyd reminds them to follow exactly what he had told them and to make sure they head in the right direction. Before night falls, make sure to find the tent. The two agree and leave. At the same time, Ellis rushes to Boyd and tells him that Donna is calling for him. Boyd goes with Ellis. Donna starts explaining that all their crops have been ruined and they have nothing left. And even the soil has turned toxic, making it impossible to grow anything. Boyd becomes concerned. Meanwhile, the food crisis causes the townspeople to gather at Mrs. Chan's house, accusing her of hiding food in the basement. Mrs. Chan tries to explain, but they raid her supplies and take all the food. Randall brings out a goat from the farm for food, but the goat is precious to Ethan, who begs him not to take it. Randall ignores him, and Victor tries to wrestle the goat from Randall. When Randall refuses, Victor pulls out his gun. Just then, Ellis and Boyd arrive, and Boyd convinces Victor to hand over the gun. Boyd tells Randall, "Look, we're already short on food, and we're relying on these animals for our survival. They give us eggs and milk. If we kill them, we'll have no other way to survive." After hearing this, Randall gives up the goat. Meanwhile, Jim and Kenny reach the forest, where they see several eerie statues. As they move further, they come across some abandoned wooden cabins. Jim examines the wood and realizes the cabins are still very sturdy. As evening approaches, Jim suggests to Kenny that they should spend the night in one of the cabins, but Kenny points out that this isn't the tent Boyd had mentioned. Kenny insists they should keep moving, but as daylight fades, they're forced to stay in the cabin. The scene shifts to Algin, who falls asleep while working with Tilly. Tilly suggests he get some rest in his room, but Algin tells her that whenever he sleeps, he sees a terrifying monster that tries to grab him. Tilly, too, suddenly sees the monster. The creature places its hand on Algin's cheek, and he abruptly wakes up, finding neither Tilly nor the monster there. Meanwhile, Victor is cleaning up the damage at Mrs. Chan's house. Donna arrives and comments that they were already facing a food shortage. And now, after the attack, the remaining supplies have been stolen. Boyd, Donna, and Mrs. Chan discuss how to handle the situation. Donna is devastated, especially with the crops and soil being poisoned, and she suggests using the animals for food, but Boyd opposes this. Boyd explains that they don't have many animals left. Mrs. Chan suggests they grow crops again, but in a different location. Both Boyd and Donna like the idea. Boyd says they have enough goats to last at least a month, but they need to start growing new crops as soon as possible. Ethan overhears this and storms off in anger, so he leaves. Boyd follows him and asks if he overheard what they were discussing, to which Ethan replies yes. Boyd explains that they don't have any other options. He says that if they kill these animals and eat them, the animals would be the true heroes for saving their lives. Ethan then responds by saying, "Are you going to start by eating my goat?" Boyd nods in agreement. Meanwhile, Tabitha arrives at Victor's house. An elderly man named Henry, assuming she's a beggar, tells her to leave. But when Henry notices the sketch box in her hand, he asks where she got it. Tabitha realizes this man is Victor's father. In the forest, at the same time, Jim and Kenny are hiding in the woods, sheltering in small cabins. As they sit and talk, they hear the sound of monsters nearby and grow worried. After a while, the creatures leave. Jim realizes that if something were to happen to him, there would be no one left to care for his children. He tells Kenny that they'll head back to the town first thing in the morning. In the iconic final scene of episode 1, the monsters are shown releasing all the animals from the farm. Boyd is having a drink when Jade comes over and asks where he got it from. Boyd tells him that he found the drink with Katri, who was a priest. Boyd offers Jade a drink as well. And while they're talking, Boyd suddenly hears the sound of cattle outside. Looking through the window, he sees all the cows roaming around. Boyd quickly heads outside to catch the cows, and Jade follows him. As they both start herding the cows back to the farm, Victor peeks through the window and sees that all the animals have escaped. Chan tells Julie and Ethan to stay inside, while he and Mrs. Chan head outside. Meanwhile, their shouting wakes Randall, who sees everyone trying to catch the animals. At that moment, Randall notices that a group of monsters is coming out from the opposite side. One by one, he quickly honks the car horn to alert everyone. On the other hand, Ethan sees his favorite goat wandering around alone. Ignoring Julie, he opens the front door to catch the goat, but at that moment, the monster resembling the grandmother from season 1 rushes into their house. Julie and Ethan quickly escape through the back door. Boyd and Jade are hurriedly trying to bring the animals back to the barn. When the monsters arrive and kill one of the cows, Jade becomes terrified, and Victor rushes over to take her away. The monster starts to scream. Sarah arrives and helps Ethan and Julie escape, leading them away from danger. Realizing the monster's activity, Sarah leads Ethan and Julie out onto the street. Randall calls them and asks them to come to his bus. Victor and Jade quickly bring the animals to the nearest houses, while Boyd tries to lead the last cow toward the barn house. Mrs. Chan comes forward to help him, but Boyd tells her not to. However, Mrs. Chan refuses to leave him behind. They manage to get the cow inside and hang a talisman stone on the door. But when he looks around, he realizes the monsters have already arrived. The monsters grab both Boyd and Chen. They taunt Boyd, saying, "You said you weren't afraid of us. Let's see if that's true now." They handcuff him, and Boyd tells them, "You can kill me, but let her go." The monsters respond, "If we wanted to kill you, we would have done it already." They start torturing Chen. As she screams in agony, the monsters seem to enjoy it even more. This is how the night continues, and this is where the first episode ends. We'll see you in episode 2.